a while since we spoke, and we've been here on the podcast.
Yes,
Did you have a good Diwali celebration?
I did. And how was your trip to Italy?
Oh, it was fabulous. It's fantastic. Me and a girlfriend and two of us. It was beautiful. 9 days. We had a blast. It was fantastic. Yeah. Really, really, really well deserved break. We enjoyed ourselves. The weather was lovely. So fantastic. I'm big fan of off-season travel, but I should talk about that in another day. Let's skip.
Let's do a podcast on that
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
So
So today we're looking at redefining success.
yeah. So you tell me, Ramya, you came up with the topic. How successful do you feel?
Hmm. Okay. So the honest answer to that is it depends on the day. And it does. And there's a spectrum. So even today, even in the last 1 week, there will be days when I wake up and I don't feel successful. And I'm feeling like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm such a loser and all of that. And then there are going to be days when I feel extremely successful and very centered, very intentional, very much on track. And the good thing is over the years, when I have those days and those moments when I'm feeling like a complete, again in quotes, because these are just labels, but the word, our minds use these words, success, failure, and when I don't feel like, I don't feel so much like a failure, but when I feel like a not like a success, right? So it's a spectrum. Like when I don't feel like a success, and if I'm feeling low about it, it I think it usually takes about, it doesn't last more than half a day. Within half a day I have come back to reminding myself of my meticulously crafted personal definition of success. I've reminded myself, I've brought my mind back, taught it, hey, look, this is what we decided, this is what we agreed on, so this is the way you get to think about this. And once I've done that, that thought thinking reframe, the feelings follow automatically, and then I'm feeling successful.
Wow.
So
You have such a wonderful process to make yourself feel better.
yeah, so and then the time is coming down over the years.
Yeah. So what percentage do you say roughly you're at right now?
um you know I will say it's 50-50. Like, I'm actually not tracking myself on the number of times the thought of I'm not successful comes up, but I'm tracking myself on the time that it takes for me to come back into alignment
Mhm.
and feeling all content, satisfied, happy, and successful and on point. So that is the sort of metric I'm tracking. And and I think I'm really okay for my mind to get hijacked, because I think it will get hijacked, because my current definitions of success are like, some of them are 2 years old, some are 4 years old, 5 years old, max, like the academic one is 10 years old, right? Some of are newer, but the earlier, the conditioned definitions of success that have been nailed in, they are like, I'm 48, so they're like 30, 40, nearly 50 years old. Obviously they have a stronger hold on my head. So anything can trigger it. I live in a business school. I so anything, a conversation or breakfast, something in the night, anything can just like boom. So the hijack happens, but my task is to bring myself back after that.
And how do you feel when you feel successful?
I feel good. That's like that's what that word is loaded with, right? I feel good. Yeah. So I have a confession actually. There was a time when, this is almost like 15 years ago, when I started this. I was really into J. Krishnamurti, and I still am, but we were doing all the unconditioning. I tried to operate without a label of success itself. It didn't work for me, because even when I left it, like I told you, all the conversations, listening to someone, watching a YouTube, watching a TED talk, a breakfast conversation, someone mentioning, hey, look how successful that person is. Those things would just still trigger, and my brain still had that old definition of success because it's not completely let go. And I would get hijacked, and I would have no way to come back post that hijack. So now, because I've redefined it for myself, I have a return route when that hijack happens. So that is, I don't know if it's then, I'm sure, so Krishnamurti will not agree with this, but it works.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Shweta, you tell me. So you're someone, and I mean this, I really mean this, someone I've really admired. So I work with people, right? I work, so redefining success is actually a chapter in my book, and I help people create and craft their own definitions of success. And it's not an easy journey. Like I said, it's not a one-time journey. And we do it very deliberately through exercises and all. But I've also been reading your posts, your comments, your perspectives, your answers to people's questions on the many common WhatsApp groups we have, and before that, the WIM Facebook group. And I've seen you as someone who has organically, in your own way, very clearly redefined success for yourself. I mean, I that's what I have seen through your writings and posts. So I really want to know how you did it, why you did it, and your journey. Because for me, you're a case study, and you're a beautiful case study of someone who's done this very in a very organic way.
I think I think one thing we need to first start by acknowledging to our audience that maybe it's our cultural upbringing. Our culture has a big part to play, and I say that as having lived in 3 countries. I do think Indians struggle with this a little bit more than some other cultures do, right?
And I
Um,
think part of that is also because in India we have very tight, very uniform, very standardized, thanks to all our standardized tests,
Correct.
definitions and boxes of success. And like they're very pakka, very robust, right? So it's more like I'm wearing black and white. It's more black and white here. Whereas in many other countries and cultures, because there's so many, it's not so black and white, it's not so pakka, it's not so boxed up.
Yeah, and it's also like I said, I've been trying to kind of analyze. So I didn't grow up any differently from anyone else, right? And in all honesty, I called up when I've had important triggers in my life that forced me to relocate. And before I could talk about it, I had to seek consent from a family member uh, who was responsible or whose own experiences with it was responsible for my own sort of journey. Right? So I think one grows up like I said, a lot of us grow up in India in an extremely competitive setting, right? It's not just in our homes. Our parents are always telling us to come first, come second. I was a topper my whole school life. My brother was a topper, and that's celebrated. That's expected. At least in South Indian homes, it's a given, right?
Yes.
It's very much part of the DNA. But in addition to that, if you see, at least where you and I are roughly the same age, we grew up in the 80s. We grew up in a lot of scarcity, right? And if you see a lot of us, the reason our entire generation and maybe even the generation after, we've grown up with scarcity in the sense of not just material scarcity. It's not about not having a home or something. We're 10 lakh people writing an entrance exam for 1,000 seats. That kind of scarcity. There's very access to good quality education. There's always was always scarce, right? So we grow up in a very, very competitive environment where we're constantly competing to get ahead, right? So obviously that does seep in, and that then translates into even at the workplace. We are always competing, and we Indians are. I've found, having worked with people across, we are one of the more toxically competitive. We're always looking to, because it's not just about you going up; it's also about the other person coming down. So we build that into our DNA at some level. We are very competitive, and I was no different, to be honest. Right, I grew up in that entire setup. That's how I ended up at an IME. There was this telling episode after my 12th exam where I had messed up my math paper in a really big way, and in my family we all sat and cried together. We literally, there was tears in the household. My parents, my late parents, my brother, and I was already distraught that, my future is ruined. My parents were, I mean, there was really no perspective setting. That's how intense the whole academic setting was. But then something did happen. I think, I was obviously pretty much very soon after I joined work in the corporate world, I realized it was not for me. I did not enjoy it at all. But our mindset is such that you don't have the guts to leave it, right? Because there's money, there's position, there's the social prestige that comes with all of it. But around 2004, a really close family member, someone I loved and I respected a lot, uh, actually developed mental illness, right? This was someone I saw very, very closely. And I saw their journey. And what caused them that mental illness is now we speak about it in statistics and burnout and pandemic, burnout and mental health epidemics. This is now, I'm talking 20 years ago, this is already happening, right? Someone who had driven themselves into a mental health crisis by being excessively competitive, by always comparing themselves, by never things not being good enough, and had driven themselves into a corner where they had driven. And this was that made me for the very first time question everything around uh, our current definitions of success. That was my first wake up call. But that was just the beginning, right? I mean, after that, it still took me many, many years to actually quit my corporate job. And that was another crisis. I developed a clinical depression. And I had everything going for me on paper. I was scheduled to be, and I've written about it. I've written about it on LinkedIn. It was one of my more viral posts. Is I was what 33. I was one step from being a country manager. I was managing a $6 million services business in a small market, pretty much. I had the country managers of all the pharma companies eating out of my hands. I had a white paper out. So I was doing really well professionally. I had a great family. I was living an expat life. I had a husband. I had a kid. Yet somehow there was something going terribly wrong inside of me, right? I in the inside of it, we were struggling. There were two high stress careers. My husband was also in a high stress job. I was in a high stress job. We had a small kid. I was competing with him instead of collaborating with him. So we were like, oh, are you doing more at home? Am I doing more at home? We had that kind of a very toxic dynamic, which I had created, very little to do with him. And so while on paper we were this young, happening, successful couple, I was actually deeply depressed. I got clinical depression, you know. And the job that I was doing, I never had the guts to quit it. But because, I was obviously paid well, I had my own car, I had my own driver. It was my dream to become a general manager. And I was one step from being at it. And I would have been one of the youngest people to do so. Yeah. But I was really unhappy. And I saw what my boss was doing, how he was spending his time. Honestly, in an MNC, in a country manager's role, you don't have that many degrees of freedom. So the degrees of freedom in my job were few. There was not a lot of challenge. It was, it was not fun. I wasn't getting a lot of fun out of it, and I was truly clinically depressed, right? So that was the beginning of my transformation. I mean, I guess we all need a trigger to kind of start questioning the basics. I wonder what was yours. You never mentioned what got you on that journey.
Wow. Um, so you mentioned depression, and I've been through depression as well. But that came later for me. It was more postpartum. But career wise, I wouldn't call it depression, but I just couldn't make it work. I didn't fit in. And I was unhappy, upset. Like it just didn't work, right? So, and I tried different jobs, different countries, again, US, Bangalore, whether it was living alone. So I had a very, and I've written about it in my book as well. I call it from pain to purpose. So the
Hmm.
reason I help people craft their careers really is because I had to craft my own. And it wasn't at all an easy journey. It isn't, but it's fulfilling. Even, yeah. So Yeah. So that's, I really think it is. I think, and in hindsight, I have a very like today, the older, mature, I don't know, mature, maybe it's an overstated statement of a word, but the older, I don't even know whether to call it wiser version of me, the way my worldview really is now, that the universe helps us craft. Like, we might be thinking we're crafting, but it's always co creation. And we're given these knocks, these blows, these pains, these failures, all of it. And many times with the body also, like every time my body has broken down and protest, I think body is one of the first ones to say, nahi nahi chalega, nahi chalega, nahi chalega, nahi chal, nahi karna hai, nahi jana hai, nahi. And so I think for me the body has been that way of wonderful. Even now we were just talking about what I'm going through, and I see that the role. So I think it's not just my body, but my body has played a huge mentor for me, like literally telling me, we won't do this, we'll do this, let's choose this. So that's been my journey of uh, yeah.
I want to stop you. A lot of people's bodies tell them a lot of things. You learn to listen to your body. How did that happen?
Yeah. Okay. So I was a very sickly child. I was, as a baby, I've troubled my parents way. Like, if you talk to my mother, she's like, she feels like her entire youth was ruined because of having like a sickly child. I was really sick and weak. I mean, I was a player at one level, but I was also sick. I used to keep, getting fever and this and that and stomach ache, headache, taken to many doctors. My parents took me everywhere. Now I see a lot of those as talk about competition, 11th standard, 12th standard, headaches and stomach ache that nobody could figure out, right? Not allopathy, not Ayurvedic, not nature cure. Everybody, like my parents didn't leave anything, homeopathy, nothing. And which sort of meant then I became my own doctor when nothing else. So because I became my own doctor, I started looking at energy medicine, this, that, and that's been a parallel journey of my life. And so I think that is when that whole conversation with the body started, and I started taking the body very seriously. And it's not, I won't say ki I woke up and it's been, then I would take the body for granted, then tadak, right? And then again I'm like taking it for granted, tadak. So yeah, it's an ongoing thing. If I don't take it seriously, if I don't listen to it, my body knocks me down big time. So
So one of the things that happened to me, and not related to the body, one is you said the body is a trigger, the body, you listen to your body, something's happened. The other thing is listening, like turning the lens inward and getting a sense of your own energy. And this was something that a therapist taught when I was in therapy, when I moved to Thailand before my clinical depression, but I was already going through stuff. I was in therapy, and till then, it was really alien to me to how do you even know what is going on inside of you? How do you assess your own energy? How do you assess that? How did that happen for you? So, like for me, that process came with practice, learning to pause, learning to actively then look at experiences and say, is this giving me energy, not giving me energy, giving me energy, not giving me energy? And look at everything from the lens of energy to me versus what it means for the world. While it's very hard to divorce that, and just because you know that there is energy doesn't mean you're going to be able to stop doing the other stuff, but at least being able to recognize it. I'm curious, how did you learn to recognize that for yourself?
So I'm going to break it in two parts because I heard something very powerful in your question, and I'm going to reiterate that because I want our listeners to get that because I'm getting it only now. This whole thing of what is energizing you, what is draining you, what is for you, what is for others, and coupling that with energy, right? Now that is something, Shweta, I'll be completely honest, I'm working with it this year. But energy awareness and working with energy itself, I've been doing for a very long time, and that is through every course on the planet about energy healing and like Reiki, access consciousness, pranic healing, pranic psychotherapy, like and chakra work. I've literally attended courses, done the workshops. So the physics of energy, how to work with it, I've been, along with all my other degrees, I've been doing that. But with that awareness now, making what you said is very important, this wiser choice of, is it really helping me, is it flowing, that is something it's very alive. I'm doing that now and learning to use those very energies to, for example, set boundaries, make choices. There's another word that you used earlier on, which is the guts, right?
Hmm.
Courage, the boldness, using energy practices to support me in making those bold choices. Shweta, I'm doing that as we are speaking. This, I guess I told you in October I went to a Chitta Vidya
Yeah,
retreat
yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
Tamil Nadu. So we worked with the Navarasas there. It was
Wow.
a very, 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 very powerful inner work, process work, 5 day retreat for me. And I touched base. So there's Bhaya, fear, and then there's the Veera, and then there's Rudra, and of course there are lots others, but the connection between these three came alive to me in many ways. So really using this insight, this awareness, this listening to, to convert it more and more into Veera rather than Bhaya and Rudra.
Hmm.
For me, I was oscillating between Bhaya and Rudra. I would be afraid, 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 therefore not speak up, therefore not put boundaries, therefore not say anything, therefore be the I'm a good girl, I'll be nice to everyone. And then when it becomes too much, what happens? Boom! Look at, like, shoo, like, this is it, one word. So going directly into Rudra from there, right? And that's the awareness. So now there's a, for me, like, if I can be more Veera, which is the guts that you were talking about, that bravery and setting those boundaries, then the Rudra doesn't have to come in to rescue me because I've been this Bhaya, right? So that's, it is work in progress, very easy to speak,
Yeah.
tough to practice, chal raha hai.
Same for me. I mean, it's one thing to know in theory that success for me is now, I do have my own definitions of success. Which brings me to the point. What is your current definition of success?
Okay, so one of the things that I decided, and I also teach and coach, and I put this in my book, is to, when we redefine success, to redefine it in terms of dimensions rather than destinations,
Hmm.
directions. So that they're really, the definitions of success are telling paths that we
Hmm.
walk on. So I have about 5 things, and I play around with them, right? One or more. So one is, so being aligned. So, okay, so it sounds a little esoteric, but this is me and this is where I am. So to be an embodiment of love, light, and joy on the planet. And there's one more, which is about alignment of body, mind, soul. So if you again speak in pranic terms, annamaya kosha, pranamaya kosha, manomaya, like really having catering to that whole self. The third one is, of course, to de-villainize work and impact people. So that's my personal mission statement. That's what I want to do. So how many people can I touch, reach, and impact through that? The fourth one is looking after and supporting all the people near and dear ones to me, the ones who are dependent, the ones in my circle, right? So catering for them in whatever way possible and in an abundant way so that I can do that. And I forget the fourth one and the fifth one, but it's about communing with inner and outer nature. So really seeking out more and more opportunities, lifestyles, ways to live in nature, bond with nature. And nature for me is not just plants, but plants, animals, sky, open, everything except human beings. I mean, like Mother Earth, getting my feet on the ground, all of that.
For me, I think the definition of success is very much evolving. There are a few things that I value today, and it could change. But right now, the thing that I'm most grateful for. So for me, success is gratitude, right? It's the able to be grateful for many things in my life is, and I do feel gratitude also feeds the sense of feeling successful. So I think it's a two-way process.
Absolutely.
And I recommend that practice greatly to people as well. That when you're constantly beating yourself up, you're feeling like your life is not going well, develop a gratitude practice. In general, you'll just feel better about yourself and you will feel more successful. So
Yes.
that's one of my, I would say, one of my tricks to feel more successes is generally be grateful in life. The second thing, how I measure my own success, is the degrees of freedom I have with my time, right?
Yes.
So for me, success for the longest period has always been about freedom. It's about what I can choose to do and what I can choose not to do with my time, right?
Let's
And
repeat that, because
hmm,
that's for me, and I think that's something that's going to be like, true for a lot of people. So
yeah,
choose, because we often think of what I can choose to do with my time, but the second thing you mentioned, Shraddha, needs to be repeated. And choose not to do with my time is
yeah.
also such a key variable.
So for me, the ability to say no to work that I don't enjoy, say no to events I don't want to spend time in, right? So the ability to choose the people in my life. So that the degrees of freedom to me, as you're getting more successful, you are having more and more degrees of freedom in your life. And so to me, success has come to mean greater degrees of freedom. I choose to do the work I love. I choose to not worry about the money I make from that work, right? Both of which is a privilege, right? And I acknowledge that.
And what I'm hearing, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing, but what you didn't say is also, even in doing what you love, you can choose to do how much of it.
Correct.
Right? So, which
Mhm.
means if you get 10 assignments that you love, you can say, no, I will just do three and still feel very successful about it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
What I am still grappling with is there are days and weeks when there is a lot of work, so the flow is not in my control, right? There are times when there is a lot of work and there are times when there is very little work. And when there is very little work, you spoke about old narratives, those begin to come in. And just as you were talking about that today, in this thing, it occurred to me that I did that to myself earlier this week. I've come back from a holiday. I have only one or two live projects. Before going that, for 3 months, I was packed. I was working non-stop. I was working 60-hour weeks, and that felt great. I enjoyed it. But I was also looking forward to the down phase because I was really looking forward to this phase when I will have less work. But now that it came, I was anxious and worried. And then I had to remind myself that this is the old narrative. This is just an old habit. This is not how you feel about this right now. I had to remind myself that. So success is that. The other thing for me, success is just the other thing that makes me feel successful is routine, right? Writing my having journaling every day, exercising every day, eating healthy every day. And when I do a bunch of those things, I just feel very good at the end of the day and I feel successful, right? So I do have some of these self-care practices that help me feel successful. What I'm still struggling with is there are obviously, in addition to this, there's still parts of me that fights with the old definitions of success, right? There is still the part of me that says, oh my God, your friend is earning X, or that one's earning Y, and this one's earning Z. And when you do the kind of work I do, obviously you do. My business is not that big, so I don't make the kind of money I would if I had a corporate job. You know, so there are those pangs that do come up every once in a while. But I've learned to remind myself that I've chosen this, right? And I enjoy, and I remind myself that I've seen the opposite. I've seen the opposite when the work wasn't fun, but the money was fabulous, and I know what that feels like. So for me, therefore, immediately I'm able to anchor myself with the memory of that, right?
Yeah. So thanks for sharing this, Shweta, because I know we are nearly out of time, but I just want to share something on that because on the the predictability of being in a salary job and therefore knowing that you're always going to get a certain amount of work every month and a certain amount of salary. So this is very common, and I just want to talk about this because both of us have made that transition, and I know that, and as a coach I know now that a lot of others are struggling to make that. And I remember having written a post once when I made it, when I transitioned from being a full-time academic, when I was getting the salary and the structured standard work, right, to into this. It was because a friend of mine, she's a WIM actually, called they just finished, she asked me a question, Ramya, are you addicted to your salary?
Hmm.
And I looked up the definition of addicted and I realized I was. And
Hmm.
so I was like, okay, fine. So I worked myself out. But that, once you're a freelancer, it is never going to be standard. There will be times when the world is knocking at your door. Everyone is saying, come, come, come. And you're saying, time nahi hai, and all of that. And there will be times when nobody wants, right? And there are those lean seasons and all. And you don't know why. The world operates like that, right? And it's very easy to doubt in those times and all. And of course what you're doing is wonderful, working with ourselves so we don't doubt. But I also built in something on my own, which is, I write, I'm writing a book, and after my first one I'm writing the second. So for me now, if when I'm not being called, I'm like, okay, I have something else going on that doesn't depend on anyone else. And that's also like an external hack, but it buffers with that. So that's something that, yeah, as freelancers, we can have a part of our work that is independent of everything and everyone else.
Tell me one thing as we wrap, we should absolutely, we've spoken about our own transformation journeys, we've spoken about definitions of success. If we were to leave our listeners with two or three things that they could do to redefine their own success, what should they do?
Well, read my book. I have a chapter on it. But okay, couple of things. You can write your own obituary, go back, which means imagine that you're really old and look back at your life and see how, and that's going to change a lot of things in terms of how you're now looking bottom up way of looking at your definition of success, which is the conditioning, versus what will actually make you feel true and fulfilled. Do any kinds of value clarification exercises. There are so many, which is basically what you care. So if you see my 5 dimensions, they're all built bottom up, but based on things that I deeply care about, whether it's nature, whether it's this, it's health, all of that, right? Or yours, Shweta, degrees of freedom, choice. So really value clarification, and that's another way of redefining. Yeah, these are the two. What would you offer, Shweta?
So I often ask myself this: if I knew I had 2 months to live or 3 months to live, how would I live my life differently?
Oh, yes.
And it always occurs to me that I would do exactly what I'm doing right now. I would change nothing, right? I would change nothing at all. So I think that to me is, even though I mean some other choices, like I mean, like I said, in these high pressure choices, one can think that, oh, maybe I should be doing this or thing. But when I actually sit down and think about, if I had 2 days to live or 5 days to live, or if I knew I had finite time to live, how would I live my life? And for me, the answer always is I would continue to do exactly what I'm doing right now. So that's how I know. And that's the question, that's a clarification question for me. That if I had only so many days to live, how would you live your life? And I think the goal is for all of us to get to that point, because then everything else falls away.
Yeah.
Everything else, when you have a finite time, you're living for yourself. You're only living for yourself because you have certain things that you want to do before you die. And for me, that's pretty much, yeah, I would do exactly what I'm doing right now.
That's a good question, Shweta. Absolutely. And I do want to let our listeners know that the old definitions of success will come up. It's years and years of conditioning. When they come up, like of course they come up, but we don't have to give them all that importance. They can just say, okay, this is conditioned one, now it's this, and choose that.
And not just that, I think also we need to remind them that some of these old are not invalid. Like money. We can't tell people, hey, don't chase money and be on the streets of
You
life.
can have it in your new one. So I have abundance in my new definition also. So
Yeah.
it's like cleaning out your closet. Actually, that's an analogy I use in my book.
Yeah.
You look at the old ones and some are irrelevant, some are expired, some might have been true for your parents, but not you and all. So you can let go of those. It means you can't really let go, but not give them too much bhav. But the ones that are important and relevant, keep them and bring them into your current ones. So absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Take
Mm.
care.
Okay, feel like talking longer today. Take care, and we'll catch up on our next
Catch up soon.
podcast.